I'm Adam Dorito, and welcome back to the Tux and Tomahawks podcast. And I have changed my intro now since the last episode. I decided it was a good idea to become the next congressman for Colorado's Congressional District 8. And how we're going to change this show up now moving forward is, yes, I'm going to bring a normal guest from around the country. And as much as it's really cool talking like Navy SEALs and special operations dudes, I want to actually talk to normal, everyday constituents. That's who I want to. I'm bringing on Blake Jones. And for those who don't know him, he's the kid who got beat up at CSU just for believing in God and just for proclaiming the word of Christ. And as a Catholic as well, I'm all for this. I'm all for bringing back the Crusades. And I actually just noticed now here you have my campaign sign in the back of your room. That's awesome.
So using the chapstick as well.
He's got the chapstick. It's all about the chap because my lips hurt real bad, like Napoleon Dynamite. And this is like, I'm a normal guy. I am not special. I'm an Army officer in the reserve. I work in oil and gas. I'm a substitute teacher in my spare time. And I'm a hobby farmer out here in LaSalle in Weld County. And I met Blake at a Turning Point event when I went out there and I was just speaking about things that you can do to take actions as a citizen. And then after that, I decided it was a good idea to run for Congress. So I wanted to bring Blake in just to have these normal conversations and explain what happened to him and what he's doing to be an American citizen. And one of the examples I always like to give now is there's an ending scene in Saving Private Ryan when Captain Miller gets shot on the bridge and Private Miller walks up to him and he goes, "Earn this." Right. And whether it's illegal immigration or anything else, one thing that I love about all the younger Americans that I see every day now is they're trying to earn it. The affordability crisis is insane. They can't afford to buy houses. They're worried about raising their kids. They're worried about paying for school. And our politicians today aren't doing anything. And Blake's out there at Colorado State University trying to just have conversations with normal people. And he's still getting attacked. So, Blake, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This is awesome. I'm really glad to get this story out and tell people what happened to me.
So give everyone a little background. Who are you? Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And then how did you end up getting into fights at CSU?
So my name is Blake Jones. I grew up in Arvada in a non-denominational Christian household. I was a non-denominational Christian since I was born to when I was probably like 13, 14. And then I kind of just turned into an atheist. I didn't think God existed. I actually thought the idea of God was silly. And then Charlie Kirk died. Well, one of my friends passed away over the summer, which was really sad this year. So that turned me towards Christ a lot because I took a trip to Rome as well. And I got very close with God, touring all these Catholic churches, going to the Vatican. I just felt this presence. I don't know what it was. Now I think it was probably just me getting closer to the Lord. And I had some awakening moment where I realized, oh, this is real. And I became a Catholic ever since then. But I wasn't very into politics. And then Charlie Kirk died. And that was really an awakening to me and told me I needed to get more involved in politics as well as celebrating my faith, which led me to join Turning Point USA at CSU and be more outspoken about all the things I believe in.
No, welcome to the faith, brother. I'm also a Catholic. And you know, the funny thing is I had a very similar experience to you growing up. Like I was a cradle Catholic. I went to CCD. I was forced to go all the boring things. I just, almost got distant from God for several years in my youth, probably when I was your age. And like me, I had an awakening moment when I deployed overseas. I had a lot of bad things happen to me, and I came back hard into the faith. I actually read the Catechism. I read the Bible with the 7 books that the Protestants tried to take out. And that revelation moment you're talking about, that's the Holy Spirit, right? That's the trifecta, the Holy Trinity, right? Hey, you poking you in the face, and making things really bad for you to make you come back. So welcome to the faith and welcome to being attacked all the time for everything, right? And it's one of those things that you read about and it's like, Jesus did not come in peace, right? Like he came here to spread the gospel and he flipped tables and he even said to all of us, you will be attacked. You will be killed. It'll be brother on, father and mother on daughter, son versus, son. Like it's just how it is, right? And you're seeing that in real time. You are seeing yourself being attacked just for your faith and trying to be a good moral and ethical person.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved with Turning Point at CSU? So Charlie Kirk gets shot. I was actually on a plane in DC when it happened, and it was absolutely horrific. I've been to several events with him. And how did that start changing your mentality, and how did that get you roped into your involvement at Turning Point CSU?
Yeah, so I remember exactly what happened what I was doing, when that happened, when Charlie got shot. I was in this room I'm in right now, And he was coming to CSU, and I think a week after he was shot, it might have been less. He was supposed to come to my school, and I actually didn't really know what Turning Point was. I knew who he was, but I didn't know he founded Turning Point. I just didn't even know it existed. I was planning on asking him about abortion, though, when he came to CSU. I was really
Mhm.
excited for that. And I opened up Instagram on my phone, and the first video I see is just a video of him getting shot in the neck without any warning. Didn't search for it. It was just on my For You page, which was really awful. You know, it's not something I ever wanted to see and not something I ever want to see again. It's
Yeah.
terrible that is even online. But I immediately realized, like last year, there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. I think that people celebrated it, and I'm like, okay, those people are happy with the sitting president of the United States dying. They're bad people, but it doesn't involve me. Charlie Kirk got shot for just talking, and him and me share a lot of views. It kind of made me realize, like, these people would be okay and they would celebrate if I got shot. Like, they want me dead. They
Yeah.
want everyone who holds my views dead. And I can't like let this happen. I need to join in the fight and fight for what I believe in and like fight these evil people. Because I tell people all the time, if a Democrat or a liberal, anyone died, I would never celebrate it. I think it's poisonous,
Mhm.
just too poisonous to you, poisonous to your thoughts, to your mental health, to your morals. Just wishing for anyone to die is just horrible. It's not good for any human.
No, it's un-American, right? And as Americans, we have to lift other Americans up. And I think one of the biggest things that people don't understand is how an amazing of a country we live in. You know, I've spent plenty of time overseas in third world countries, where I salute my toilet every time I come home, and thank God that it flushes, and I'm not in a dirt hole in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of nowhere with
Yeah.
no insulation, where there's like wild animals and terrorist groups around everywhere, right? And
Yeah.
it's people, it's almost like Americans like to create problems because they have nothing else better to do because everything's so
I
good.
do.
You know, hey,
Yeah.
I can go plug my cell phone in and charge my phone at night and not have to worry about the electricity grid getting shut off. I can worry about actually drinking clean water from my faucet and not having like
Yes.
some intestinal bug destroy my entire gut genome, right? And it's just Americans forget that we are all in this together, and collectively we have a responsibility, right? Even I think one of our founding fathers stated that, you know, our constitution cannot exist without a moral and ethical people and a religious
No.
people, right? And I think that's something that people don't want to admit it, but like our entire country is based upon Christianity in its various forms,
Yeah.
right? And even Trinity Church versus USA, it's a Supreme Court case where even the Supreme Court acknowledged that the United States is founded on Christian values, right? It's in our
Yeah.
money. It's in God we trust. It's in our founding documents. Even Jesus Christ as our, you know, the ultimate creator is mentioned in our Constitution, Declaration of
Hmm.
Independence, right? And even though we have the First Amendment, we have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, which I think is great. You don't get that in many other countries. I
No.
promise you that doesn't exist,
No.
right? Is that we have the freedom to worship as long as we are willing to assimilate to American culture and American values. And I think that's one thing that's really missing from the discussion nowadays, right? Is that we have all these people that want to come into this country or in various communities, whether they're from different states, different countries, or whatever else it is. And they don't want to assimilate in order to make ourselves have a better society in general. They want to constantly combat each other. It's okay to disagree. I disagree with people all the time, but as long as we can sit down and have a beer, so to speak, at the end of the day and not be violent towards each other or try to destroy each other's lives, that's all we're trying to ask for in this society.
Exactly. Whenever I talk about immigration with people, I always say, you know, it's I don't have a problem with immigration. I have a problem with illegal immigration
Right.
and immigrants who come here, even legally, but with no plan to assimilate into our culture. They
Hmm.
leave their place for hating their country, not liking their country. They come to America, and then they bring all of the culture from the place they just left to America with zero plans of learning our language, culture, stereotype, like anything we do in America. They just no, they're going to bring their own culture. And
Yeah.
then I'll tell this to people, and they'll go, "Well, Americans don't have culture. What is American culture?" And I'm like, "It's just one of the stupidest arguments I've ever heard."
And I don't understand it. It's like, oh, well, we have no problem with like the Somali migrant crisis going on in like Dearborn, Michigan and
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, right? But when you're trying to institute Sharia law, when all the signs are changing to Arabic text, when
Yeah.
even the police department is implementing the values of that culture, that's not American culture. Those aren't
No.
American values, right? And you're pushing out real Americans. This isn't a racism thing. And if anyone who's been to Somalia or been in and around those countries, go look up pictures of Somalia. It hasn't changed ever. Okay? They killed 19, I think 19 of our special forces operators. They blew up two of our helicopters. And nothing has changed since then. It's a complete desolate
Yeah.
warscape, right? Where women are getting beheaded in the streets, children are literally starving, and they want to come here and they want to take away our tax dollars by gaming the system to try to get benefits, right? Hey, it's one thing if you
Yeah.
want to be Somali and you want to come here, raise your right hand, become a citizen, assimilate to our culture, practice your religion in private, just like we do as Catholics, right? I'm not out there making everyone say the Nicene Creed in the middle of the street, right?
Mhm.
But I'm not attacking other people for their religious beliefs, right?
No.
But when you're seeing Americans getting shouted down and getting attacked in public because they disagree with you because they're not from here, it makes you think about, are we doing the right thing? Do we have lawmakers that are enforcing these policies, right? And it's something that needs to change.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big part of it is, as you said, we're founded on Christian values. Anyone I tell that to, they always say, "Oh, we're not a Christian nation. You know, we don't
No,
have any laws directly related to Christianity." And I say, like, you're right. We aren't a Christian nation. But again, founded on Christian values means that we should all be living under the moral principles of Christianity, because that's how you, I mean, that's what Jesus, it's what God told us how to live. It's his
exactly.
instructions on how to live. It makes you live as a good person. All of the things said in the Bible, crazily enough, are still, if not more, relevant today than they were when he originally wrote it. Like today, you look at any of these verses, they're so accurate to what's going on in today's world, with especially with all the hostility and separation.
And what's interesting is that it's such a different environment from when I was in college. So I was in college from 2006 to 2010, the first time I went to college.
Mm,
And there wasn't really an issue, right? Like everyone just kind of left each other alone. Everyone practiced their own
yeah.
religions, and it was kind of like we don't publicly talk about it. But they had Bible clubs, and they had like Jewish club and Islam club or whatever you want it is. But like everyone just stayed in their circles of influence, and everyone left each other alone. And now it's, instead of having the conversations and debating each other, like there's just violent attacks, and like I just find it so atrocious that I'm seeing the similar types of attacks and rhetoric that I saw when I was in the Middle East, and it's Americans on Americans. It like blows my mind, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about this a lot. As you said earlier, you know, look at Somalia. It doesn't look very good right now. I
It's not a
find
good
most of
time.
these
It's never been a
people,
good time. It's
yeah,
never been a fun
never,
party. I'm not
no,
getting invited to a Somalian party
no,
here, there, or anywhere.
no. So most of these people I find that talk about how terrible America is and how we need people from everywhere else coming here. I'll say, oh, have you ever been to any of those countries? Have you ever left America? No, no, they've never left the country, and they're complaining so much. And I'm like, I've been to Mexico a few times, not the greatest parts of Mexico, and I can tell you, I would rather live probably anywhere in America than some of the spots of Mexico I've been to. It is not good. Like, and that's just Mexico. Think of all these other places like Somalia, as you said. It's only
Hmm.
worse. And you're saying that you want to bring all of that culture here? Go there for like a week. I promise you, your mind will change.
They won't survive a week there.
No.
One of my favorite things that I saw was the people that were the Free Palestine liberal groups,
Yeah.
and then they flew to Egypt, and then they tried to walk towards like the gate that bridged between Gaza and Egypt, and those people weren't having it. Those women weren't wearing head covers
Oh,
outside of the tourist area. They were getting their hair pulled and beaten in the streets, and they're like, "You can't do this. I'm an American citizen." I'm like, "Not in this country. The rules do not apply to you, ma'am.
my
You are
goodness.
not protected by the police. They
Uh,
do have Islamic law. They do have Islamic beliefs there." And like I said, even when I was in those countries, even though I'm a Catholic, and if they found that out, they'd probably cut my head off, I still had to respect their cultural procedures, right? I
mhm,
had to
of
wear
course.
clothing that covered me. When we brought women soldiers out with us and intelligence assets, we had to make sure that they were covered and they were respecting the culture so they don't make yourself a target, right? And that's just in the military or on a tourist thing. Like, you don't walk around Russia in a thong. Like, it's not going to work out well for
No.
you. Now, I don't recommend any American citizen go to Russia right now. You're going to jail because they're just going to think you're some kind of intelligence asset, right? But
Yeah.
it's people that obviously not only have not traveled outside the country, but have probably barely left a 50 to 100-mile circle around their Raven hometown, right?
Exactly. You know, it's worse because when these people commit crimes because they're bringing their home culture here, we should be cracking down on it and like showing off how awful this is and making sure to give it great media attention. We do the complete opposite. There was a guy recently who sexually assaulted like a 7-year-old girl from Somalia. And instead of outlining how horrible this behavior was, they have an article trying to defend him. The court does, that they wrote. And one of the excuses they gave is that he hasn't fully assimilated to American culture yet.
Yeah,
This
no.
is the culture you want them bringing here? Sexually assaulting 7-year-olds, and you're just, oh, well, it's Somalian culture. It's fine. No,
Yeah.
that's like ridiculous. What are we doing?
It's one thing we always talk about in the military. If you import the third world, you will get the
You
third
will
world.
become
I
the third world.
promise
Yes.
you, it's not
Yep.
going to change, right? And here's the thing, like that's why I'm an America First candidate, right? Is that we have so many issues that need to be taken care of in this country, not only in my local community and in my district, but in this country. And I'm all
Hmm.
for Israel having the right to exist. I'm all for the
Yeah.
Palestinian people fighting for their right to have their own country, you know. But this is a common thing that people don't want to talk about unless you have the ability to achieve this through diplomatic, financial, or military means, you don't have a right to keep it, right? People don't want to talk about it. Like, oh, it's not fair that they invaded my country or that XYZ is happening. I'm like, are you going to fight for it? You know, in America, you know why Mexico doesn't invade us anymore? Because we have way cooler bombs and
Yeah.
military airplanes than they have. It's something people don't want to talk about. We have great
No.
diplomatic power. We have extreme financial power. We have great military assets that can ensure the safety and security of our national security objectives, right? So, unless you're willing to die, right, literally, for what you believe in order to secure those things, you don't necessarily have a right to keep it if someone else attacks you, right? We're seeing this go on in Ukraine. We're seeing this go on in Israel. We're seeing this go on in I mean, you go to Morocco or any of these Western African countries, West African countries that are going on right now in the Horn, like it's not fair. Like what's going on in South
No.
Africa, right? It's hey man,
Yeah.
humans have been at war for like thousands of years, and you're acting surprised that oh my god, humans are still at war. Why can't we all just get along and live in peace? I'm like, well, there's a great Simpsons episode where it's like an old one where like, can you imagine a world without lawyers and it's like everybody dancing and saying like give peace a chance and like the world is free? I'm like, yeah, this is the problem, right? Is that humans will always fight for resources and what they believe in. And if you have the ability to keep it diplomatically, financially, or militarily, then you're going to be able to keep it. And if you don't, and another country invades you, or another people come and takes all your money, or dissolves your constitution, don't be surprised that you're losing it. And this is one thing I
Yeah.
think we're seeing now in our country in real time is we may not be losing militarily, so to speak. We may not be losing financially, so to speak, here in the US. But one thing we're seeing a lot of illegal immigrants do is dissolve our constitution very slowly by infiltrating government offices. We are now seeing that these people are slowly overtaking city council positions, mayor positions, and no one's paying attention to this. And this is one of the things I try to encourage so many young people to be involved in is become a precinct committee person, become a district captain, get involved in your local electoral process. You can't complain that you're losing your culture if you're allowing your culture to dissolve in front of you and not doing anything about it.
Yeah, we have people like Ilhan Omar, who, I mean, she married her own brother, and we're letting her have a Congress seat. I think it's
And
Congress.
they
And
let it happen though, right? The
we let
people
we
of
let her,
Minnesota
yes, for sure.
allowed
Yeah.
it. So the
I
only
don't
people you have to
understand.
blame is the people of Minnesota.
I don't even understand how it was legal for her to be here, marrying her own brother to get to America. That whole thing to me, it still blows my mind. I mean, she's admitted that it's true and then shamed Donald Trump for mentioning it, which is like, we can't mention the fact that you married your own brother. It's pretty weird that you're
Hey,
serving in the
facts hurt
government and did
people's
that.
feelings, Blake. We're not allowed to do that,
Oh my
right?
God.
And that's what just what blows my mind is that American citizens are they act all surprised when we have this influx of crime, when we have an influx of the cost of living, when their taxes are going up to order to pay for all these things because you guys keep like for example in Colorado, they get rid of Tabor by keep tacking on fees to try to fill the coffers of Denver's central bank here, so to speak, because they can't generate enough money because well they're legislating oil and gas out of existence by mandating everyone wants to convert to everything fully electric by 2030 by the Public Utilities Commission. And these are people that have like no energy experience or work in the energy industry like myself. And it's like for anyone who lives in the mountains, they know how costly electric heating boards are and taking away natural gas when we have thousands of years of supply out here is pure insanity. But we're allowing these people to take those positions. Like, I don't want to run for the Public Utilities Commission. I'm bored. I have to go take care of my kids. Well, don't act surprised when the clowns in town are now forcing public policy down your throat that go against your standard of living.
Yeah, well, there's something I love to say. I learned this from Jeff Hunt, if you know who that was or
Yep.
that is.
Mm-hmm.
He was showing off how Denver loves to virtue signal, which we do,
Yep.
or just Colorado as a whole. And what he showed off was one of our signs that says, Denver hearts immigrants in full English. And he says, how I know this is virtue signaling? Because it doesn't say it in Spanish ever. It's only in English. They want other white people to see that they love immigrants.
Yeah, you
And
can't
I'm
talk
like,
about that.
Denver, it's just, I don't, my bad. But I love to look at stuff like that. It's just creating a lot of separation in our state, I think. I think it's a lot of Denver just we're not putting a stop to anything. We're not really making any change. We're kind of just showing that we're super inclusive and trying to just be inclusive of everything. Polis is doing a lot of terrible things with our state, and I really want someone to come in and try to change it.
Exactly. And this is why I encourage people to run. This is why I'm running, is because for 15 years, I try to get people to do the right thing and change the laws and just to help our veterans and our farmers and oil and gas workers, and they won't do it. So it's like, well, if you're not going to do it, then I guess I have to do it myself, right? But we get told we're not allowed to talk about these things. I work in an industry where it's dominated by legal Hispanic immigrants. I am the minority in my job. I'm the white Irish Catholic dude from the East Coast, right? But it's the thing is that collectively, we don't see skin color. We don't see differences
No.
in religion. It's like the military. We all wear the same uniform. Shut up and do the job.
Why would
Private
any of us?
Snuffy.
Yeah.
It
I
doesn't
mean,
make any sense. But like when we all realize that once we're Americans living under the same flag, and we can unite under the principles of what our Constitution states, we have to live to preserve that. And I think a great quote I heard earlier today was that if we allow our country to dissolve away in front of us because the next greatest generation, which is us, doesn't want to stand up and defend it, then it's our responsibility for losing it, right?
yeah, well, I feel like we've gotten into a space where back when racism was super rampant, it was like your race was your most important aspect, is how it was, and that was a terrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
People only saw race. We're getting into a day and age now where it's the same way. Race is the most important thing about you, but it's the other way around. It's because they tell you that you're discriminated against all day long. If you're a minority, they tell you you can't do anything without all these DEI programs and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people who, if you even, let's say a person of color comes up and is being genuinely just rude to you, and you say, hey, that's really rude, don't do that, and you react, people will say, some people, not everyone, but some people will say you're being racist just for even correcting a person of color like that. And I'm like, I'm not seeing them in that way. I think we're all just Americans. I'm never going to look at you and notice your skin color or notice where you came from. I'm going to look at you and notice your character. But so
Yeah.
many people only notice the color. It's like, what are we doing? Why?
Well, exactly. And I think this has actually led to probably some dangerous things that I've seen. So I was at the Young Republicans Gala in New York City, right? And you had like the Nick Fuentes group. Some of those guys were out there.
Yeah.
I don't agree with his ideology and a lot of things that he says, but he has First Amendment right and he can talk however he wants as long as he's not actually hurting anybody. But some of the interesting things that he's bringing along, which I was actually having my former commander from the Air Force Academy called me. He's a terrorism expert, and we were talking about how this group of people who believe that they have, like let's say it's just the young white males in America right now. They can't afford anything. They can't get a job. They are being discriminated against in the job market because of the color of their skin or their Christian values, right? So they're being forced into this depressed economy artificially by the people that are currently running the government and implementing these policies. That is a fact. That is actually happening. And even Matt
Oh,
Walsh has talked
yes.
about this numerous times, right?
Yes.
But if they can't rationally show up at like school board meetings or, job interviews and they're not given a fair shot, that's not equality. And
No.
it's not an equal opportunity for everyone to get X amount of job or buy a
Yes.
certain house or whatever it is. So this is what happens though, is that you push these people into a corner and they become like extreme nationalists, like extreme populists. And if people want to reminisce to like that's what happened with the Nazis, like they're not technically wrong. Like that's what was going on in Germany,
Yeah.
and people want to blame it on like the Jewish community and everything back then, and that's what Hitler was blaming it on. But in reality, it actually had to do with like the Treaty of Versailles from World War I, where Germany was forced to pay basically trillions of dollars
It
equivalent to
ruined our
that time,
economy.
which
Yeah.
destroyed the economy, which they tried to blame on a certain group of people, which wasn't accurate. It had to do with multiple other things, right? But
Right.
when people, it's like what we talk about in civil affairs, right? If you take people's housing away and you take people's clean water away and you take away their access to energy, all three of those things, the tripod, if you kick out any one of those things, you're going to cause a civil war and societal unrest, right? And you're getting to a point now where young Americans, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, and even some millennials are getting to a point where I can't work harder. I can't work more than I already am. I still can't afford to pay my mortgage. What am I going to do? I'm going to blame this group of people, or I'm going to blame it on
Yeah.
this policy, or I'm going to go fight this law. And it's something that like is becoming a real thing. Nick Fuentes has millions of listeners and followers now. Millions. And there's a lot of people that agree with him. Like I said, I definitely do not agree with a lot of his viewpoints, I should say. But I recognize that that could be a problem in the future. What is that going to lead to?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. In other countries, you know what it would cause? Everyone look what happened in Rhodesia, right? Which is now like, another Zimbabwe African country. Nobody
Yes.
wants to talk about what happened in
Never.
Rhodesia. History repeats itself, right? But this was an area where these people came in and destroyed an entire country that was Western civilized because of a national populist movement that was not
Right.
controlled, right? So these are things that people don't want to talk about. That's the reality, and I'm so glad that like people in your generation, or at least even know what Rhodesia is when I talk about it,
Oh,
right?
yes.
It's a whole rabbit hole you can go into, but it's fascinating. It didn't happen that long ago, guys. Like, look
Oh,
it up, right? But I would hate to see something like that happen in America,
oh
where it
yeah.
actually turns to physical violence in the streets and people getting slaughtered because people feel backed into a corner away from what they love, which is this country and its constitution.
Yeah, that's what it is. And to touch on something you were mentioning a little bit ago with the that's not true equity inclusion with the job market, I
Mm-hmm.
fully agree with you. I like to tell people all the time when DEI was founded, it did a great thing. You know, it was a fantastic thing to put in place. I
Sure.
think we have gotten so far into DEI nowadays that they're not hiring unqualified people. I always say I don't think they're hiring unqualified people, but I think that they might be hiring, less qualified candidates. They're still qualified. They're just a little less qualified because of either how they look, because they're a woman, because where they're from, because they get both tax breaks and just tons of incentives for hiring people of color.
Mm-hmm.
They make exceptions to do it. We need to have a system where we're hiring the best person for the job. Like I go in, I
100%.
see the worker, and I'm like, oh, this guy works here. He deserves this position. He's the best one working. And even DEI, it's not necessarily hiring people that aren't qualified, but it definitely has the illusion that the people aren't qualified because of these quotas that DEI has that are unrealistic, like
Mm-hmm.
United Airlines wanting 50% of their pilot staff to be minorities by the year 2030. 50% of the applications aren't minorities. So statistically, if you have 50% of your pilot staff being minorities, then you're not, all of the people working are not the best for the job. That's how the math works. It's just, you're having pilots who are not the most qualified that they could be. And it's scary. Why are we letting this happen? It needs to be the best man for the job all the time.
And I'll give a perfect example of this because this happened a couple years ago at the Air Force Academy. Okay. So before I got wrapped up into this political stuff, I was obviously very involved with the Air Force Academy and what things were going on there. Now, pilot slots were allotted to the people who got the best test scores in flight
Mm-hmm.
school, right? And introductory pilot training, IPT as we called it, and UPT. One thing that was happening over the past couple years, and I have this directly from the source because my roommates now are all instructor pilots in the Air Force, majors, lieutenant
Mm-hmm.
colonels, right? There was something under General Brown, who was fired under the Trump administration. He was the chairman. He was the secretary, not secretary of the Air Force. He was the chief of staff of the Air Force, and ended up being the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff later on. So General Brown is also an Air Force Academy grad, and he came up with a policy known as America's Class. And America's Class was where he wanted an all minority only pilot training class to graduate all at the same time. Okay. So there was a lot of white male pilots who were way more qualified in terms of test scores, not physical appearance, just simple test
Yeah.
scores that were put on hold in waiting to get to pilot training because this group of people they were trying to force through pilot training kept failing certain courses. They call it hooking a flight. And since they wanted them to all graduate together, some of the people in that class were getting rolled back to 1 or 2 weeks prior. Then they'd have to wait to work them all the way back up to the same level because they wanted to graduate this all minority class at the same time. Some people, doesn't matter the color of your skin or where you come from, but some people are just not meant to be pilots. And some of these
Yeah.
people were being forced to go fly because they wanted to meet this DEI quota thing for the United States Air Force. So America's Class, we can show that all minorities only can graduate and not the typical graduation rates of white versus black versus Indian versus women versus whoever, right? It was absolutely disastrous. It backed up pilot training in the Air Force for years. And not only that, because you had people who were getting like basically C's and D's on their flight training, passing bare minimum, there was an increase in Class A mishaps in the United States Air Force. And a Class A mishap is $1 million of damage or more or fatalities. Okay. So more people were actually getting killed and more aircraft were crashing and getting damaged because they were forcing people who didn't even want to be pilots into pilot training to meet a DEI quota set forth by the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. right?
That
This
is
is
insane.
dangerous. It's
That is like
insane.
insane.
It's
Yes.
insane,
Wow.
right? And we lost fellow USAFA classmates who were killed by some of these people in pilot training, right? Nobody wants to talk about that, but that was
That's
directly from the source.
horrible.
That is not me making up numbers. That was given to me directly from the instructors at FAPE, First Assignment Instructor Pilot Training, and down in Texas. And they were calling me, Dorito, you need to make a TikTok about this. And I made a TikTok and I was showing all the stats and showing everything else. And man, did I get attacked for that. I was called a racist and everything else. I'm like, guys,
Oh, oh
it's
yeah.
not
Of
about
course.
racism. It's about, I don't care who you are or where you're from. We just want the best of the
Yeah.
best flying and not crashing airplanes and killing people. Now, they've obviously been rolling back those policies and we're trying to get people through pilot training again and trying to go back to just, hey, this is not about mediocrity. This is meritocracy. We don't want mediocre people flying $1 million stealth fighter
Agreed.
jets. We want the best, the guys who are scoring the highest on the test, whoever that may be. There was also a bunch of accusations of people in my class where, oh, this isn't fair. Excuse me. I didn't get a fighter pilot slot because I am this skin color. And the reason why I was forced to fly cargo planes was because my instructor pilot was white and was being racist. No, it's because you scored low on your exams and
Yeah.
you're not going to be allowed to fly by yourself in a $58 million aircraft, so to speak. We're going to make you fly with a crew of people. You still can be a pilot, but you're going to fly with like 5 guys in case something happens. We can help each other out, right?
Yeah.
So we always say the joke is the guys who do bad in pilot training always get sent to C-130s or AWACS, Airborne Warning Air Control
Yeah.
Centers, right?
That's
Because
funny.
their only job is to go up to an altitude and just fly in circles and not touch anything.
Yeah.
Hey, it's great for airline pilot training, right? But hey, not everybody's meant to be a pilot. Not everyone's meant to be a fighter pilot. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's not racist. It's because you didn't score high enough on your exam to meet the qualifications for that. But everyone wants to make it about race, and everyone wants to say it's about racism. It's not. And personally, I know people aren't going to like this opinion. But I'm glad that our military is being brought to a standard of meritocracy, right? Where I don't care who you are or where you're from, but it is not a right to join the military. It's a privilege, right? It's not like, oh, because I'm an
Yes.
American, I should be able to join the military. No,
No.
there are some people we don't let join the military, like, the handicapped. I don't want a guy in a wheelchair flying an F-16. You might be a great American. You might pass all the exams on the written side, but you can't hit the rudder pedal, so to speak, right? And there's a reason for that because our only job in the military is to kill people and break things, right? Like that's the end goal at the end state, right? So bringing it back to like Turning Point USA and CSU, you have an entire generation of Americans now who feel entitled, who believe that they should be accepted into anything for whatever they want. They aren't able
Yep.
to debate and challenge people's beliefs. And instead of, I don't know, becoming a better American, becoming better educated, they want to punch you in the face, so to speak. What was that experience like for you when they actually attacked you at CSU? What were you doing and how did that whole situation develop?
Okay. So it all started with a cross on the ground in the middle of our student center plaza.
Mhm.
So I was going to this protest to talk to people about DE or not DE. I'm sorry, about ICE, about immigration. That's what this protest was about because it was also free speech because apparently these people's free speech was being taken because like YDSA and this club called Students for Justice in Palestine, Young Democrats, Socialists of America. I'm sorry, they would write down that Donald Trump needs to be killed, that Turning Point USA is a bunch of Nazi fascists, all this stuff, and it would get removed because that was hateful messaging. And
Mhm.
they claim that was a violation of their First Amendment right. It isn't. We actually looked into it. CSU is allowed to remove the chalk. They shouldn't. So we were going to debate immigration, all this stuff. Someone drew a big 30-foot cross in the middle of the plaza. This was another Christian student, I believe, but we don't know
Mhm.
who did it. But it was a Christian. It was a plain cross. And all these clubs decided it would be fun before their protest to draw a transgender depiction of Jesus Christ with both breast implants and female genitalia with pubic hair. Very graphic image. I mean, very blasphemous. It was disgusting. Sorry, gross. So we were like, hey, instead of talking to all these people about immigration, they've kind of turned this into a religious protest. Let's go chalk Christian messages. Let's go draw Bible verses. Let's go draw crosses. And that's what I was doing.
Sure.
And the kid did not spit on me immediately. He walked up as I was drawing a verse that says, let all those who preach false gospels be accursed. Which, if you're drawing that Jesus Christ was transgender, it's basically just saying let these people be accursed if they don't accept Jesus Christ into their hearts, and I hope they all do accept him as the Lord and Savior. And he came up and said that wasn't biblical. I was a bad Christian because I was drawing a verse that would tell people to be cursed. I guess that makes me a bad Christian. He said it's not a biblical message. It's not something Jesus would have said, even though it's a direct quote from the Bible. He ended up getting very aggressive. I kept a very nice tone, but he got very aggressive and eventually ran at me and tried to punch me in the face. Some guy stopped him and held him back, thankfully. So I walked away to let them cool off, and he started antagonizing the guy who defended me, which I'm like, this guy wasn't even doing anything. He had just defended me. Get away from him. So I went back and I was like, hey, man, leave this dude alone. He helped me out. Stop talking to him. Let me just continue writing with chalk. And he told me no, and that he wasn't going to move. And I said, all right, I'll stay here until you leave. And he said, okay. And then I bent down to continue writing, and he thought I was leaving. So he went, yeah, go back to your weirdo friends. Then he saw I wasn't leaving and was writing with chalk. So he just went, oh, F you, and spit on me, which was just, it was gross. I was like shocked at first. I started looking around, hoping I would see spit on the ground. Like maybe it wasn't on me. It was just a pure shock reaction. I mean, horrible.
Yeah, I mean, and this kind of reminds me what was going on, like when those frat boys stopped the American flag from being desecrated during the Palestine protests, right on the East Coast. And good on you for standing up for what you believe, and standing up for your First Amendment rights, and standing up for the defense of your own faith and religion. I wish more Americans were bold enough to do that. But this is something that needs to stop. You know, like we don't need to be attacking Americans. We need to be attacking people who don't want to be Americans and are trying to destroy our country and our Constitution,
Yeah,
right? We need to unite around these issues. We can disagree. I have Democrat friends. I have Libertarian
same.
friends.
All of my friends are. Yeah.
Um, and I'm from the East Coast, so yeah, I definitely have friends who are gay and live on a different spectrum, so to speak. And that's fine. We're not going to agree on social issues, but you know, we can agree on so-called paving the roads, right? We can
Oh, yeah.
agree on getting good jobs. We can agree on these things, but you know, what is the feeling in your generation now? Is there a feeling of hopelessness? Like you see all the things that are going on in society now, you
Yeah.
see what's going on in Turning Point. Like, what are you expecting now to happen to America, you know, as the years go on?
Well, it's interesting. I think there's a feeling of hopelessness on both the Republican and the Democrat side, because the Democrats are hopeful, or they feel this sense of hopelessness because they think that all the Republicans are Nazi fascists trying to take over the world and turn it into like the Fourth Reich. You know, that's what they seem to believe. They call me a Nazi every single day, and believe me, I am not a Nazi. I actually tend to be very moderate. But Republicans, we ourselves feel also hopeless because everybody just keeps calling us Nazis and fascists no matter what we do. And it
Hmm.
feels like it's never going to change. Like anything I say to someone, they're going to be like, yeah, but you support a pedophile and you're a Nazi. And that's all they'll say. And they won't listen to anything else. That's just, I support a pedophile. I'm in a cult. I'm a Nazi. That's all they need to know about me. They know everything about me. And therefore, it's okay to dehumanize me and do whatever might follow without feeling bad, is what it tends to feel like. It, dehumanization, I think, is the right word.
Yeah, and for me, this is when I question people. Are you a resident or are you a citizen? You know, a resident is somebody who uses the bathroom, takes their kids to soccer practice, complains on the internet in their echo chambers, but they're just taking advantage of just living here, working free, and not being attacked like or bombed out every night like they are in some countries.
Yeah.
But a citizen is someone who has to take actual moral and ethical responsibility to participate in the preservation of the republic that they live in, right? This is why Turning Point USA, in my opinion, is so important for the youth of America right now. You're learning about civic engagement. You're learning to have conversations with people you may not agree with. You know, you
Mhm.
have to be able to learn how to reach across the aisle and talk to your neighbors across the street, so to speak. And if you aren't learning how to engage in civic values, and whether it's running for office, taking a position on the school board, any of these things I tell people to do all the time, then you don't have a right to keep your republic if people are going to trample it and destroy it.
Yeah, well, what's truly scary is, as I said, the dehumanization aspect. It's how okay these people feel doing these things. I have a professor at CSU who, the day Charlie Kirk died, he claimed that Charlie Kirk would have wanted him and his son to die because his son was gay, and Charlie Kirk had literally been shot that day, so he
Wow.
couldn't defend himself. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm sure he would have wanted me and my son to die." And I was like, "This guy, that was a crazy thing to say." I wanted to leave. And then 2 days later, I'm wearing my Trump hat in his class, which maybe I shouldn't wear a Trump hat on campus, whatever. And I tell him, thank you for the class. I have to leave early. I just thought I'd let you know. And he looks me in the eyes and goes, "You suck." And then turns and starts talking to another student. And I'm like, "Can you tell me that I suck for my hat? Is that like allowed? I think that you're not allowed to do that as a teacher." He isn't. And I complained to CSU and they like buried this immediately. They did nothing about it.
Yeah, of course
Of
they did.
course.
But
Of
it's also,
course.
this is also what's going on in our public education system now, too, is that we're not holding teachers to a standard. And I think there's been a
Mhm.
lack of standards in the public education system. When I grew up in New Jersey, we actually probably had one of the best public education systems when I was in high school, right? Where like I got really good test grades and teachers held the standard and you were expected to learn and regurgitate information and actually be able to do math and all these other things. But now we're seeing, and I think it has to do with like low pay, low standards when it comes to the teaching profession. But like it's almost like anyone with a master's degree can just go become a college professor now, or go teach a kindergarten class, or anything like that. We're not actually upholding a standard because I think we should pay our teachers more. I think there needs to be things established
Oh,
that,
sure.
I think teachers unions in some aspects can resolve some of those issues. But the problem is that's being infiltrated by people who are more concerned about social ideological policies on a personal standpoint that are degrading the ability to educate our youth. And our teachers and our parents are so important in these aspects to hold that line and hold that standard. If you're being attacked by your own teacher in college for whatever views you may have, you don't have a teacher. You have someone who's contributing to the indoctrination of their own
Yes.
philosophies, right? We should be able to like, okay, you agree on this policy. This person disagrees on that policy. Now let's have an open debate. Bring your facts, bring your pros, bring your cons, and let's talk about an educated environment. That's how I grew up all through high school, right?
Yeah,
And
it should
that's the way
be.
it was. We had debate club, we had learning unlimited. Like these are what the things we did. Now it's if you don't agree with the teacher and their current political standpoint on X, Y, Z, you suck, so to speak,
Oh,
in your own
yeah.
words, right?
Well, the
Like,
even worse part about this is he's a current world problems teacher. That's what the class is. It's
oh
current
my
world
god,
problems.
yeah,
And I'm like, and this is what you're telling people in current world problems? It was crazy. It blew my
yeah,
mind.
you can't do that, and we should not allow that, right? I think there
Hmm.
needs to be more vetting, and just like it's kind of like the military, being a teacher is not a right. It's a privilege. And you need to earn that slot. Like when I was a kid, it's kind of funny. I think like half the people wanted to become teachers because they saw it as like this illustrious position. And we grew up on the movie like Dead Poet Society with Robin Williams. You haven't seen that, highly recommend you go watch it. Great movie. Where people aspired to teach the youth of America. And they thought it as
Yeah.
such an honorable profession where you're constantly learning and engaging and dealing with people's kids. It's one of the reasons like I'm a part-time substitute Catholic teacher at St. Mary's. Like I love interacting with kids and mentoring them. And then they ask me questions and they make me learn things, when I do get to
Oh,
teach those things. But like if you are forcibly becoming a teacher in order to indoctrinate things on your own personal beliefs without allowing any outside views or perspectives, you're actually harming the next generation of Americans.
for sure. I tell people a lot because as part of Turning Point, I love to debate people. We debate people all the time at our tabling events.
Hmm.
My favorite conversations I have with people are actual respectful Democrats who come up and debate me, and we actually have discourse and are able to trade points. I tell people all the time, if you can't put yourself in the shoes of the other person in a debate, if you physically can't see as if you're seeing through their eyes, then it's a lecture. It's not a debate. You need to be able to see the other viewpoint of any debate before you even try to debate with someone. I never will debate with anybody if I can't see their viewpoint or if I haven't practiced, getting the facts on that topic before. I'll say, hey, talk to my friend over here. He knows more about this than I do. But people debate you. Well, people will debate people who they'll literally be like, no, your viewpoint's a Nazi viewpoint. And then I'll say, oh, can you put yourself in my shoes? No, I think you're evil. And I'm like, then why would I debate you? You're not going to move even an inch.
Well,
That's just lecturing me.
exactly. And this is so important. Like, it's important to have empathy, right? To understand someone else's
Yeah.
viewpoint. And if you don't, educate yourself on the subject or ask them
Hmm.
to explain what their perspective is. And then you can use your own personal life experiences to counter that. But one thing that's absolutely destroying this country, and I think you might agree on this, is our ideological consumption of suicidal empathy, right? Is
Yeah.
that we are trying to save everybody. Look, I was a firefighter, I was an EMT. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn at 17 years old when I was doing this was you can't save everybody. People die, right? And what we're doing now in the United States, whether it's illegal immigration, whether it's people we debate that we don't agree with, whether it's our neighbor we don't agree with, XYZ, is that we're willing to sacrifice our personal principles and our ethical and moral values to the point where instead of having a conversation about changing those things in a positive way, we are eroding and destroying our own life values and not allowing our own system to exist. And that can be from the
Yeah.
Constitution to the United States, right? For example, even the Catholic charity groups have a big issue with this. And I'll call them out right now. You can't save all the illegal immigrants at the border and give away all the money, food, supplies, and everything else. Because if you do, it's like the the book The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein?
Ah,
It's a great example, right? Is this tree
yes.
gave the kid everything and then eventually killed itself and it still wasn't
Yeah.
enough, right?
That's how it's looking nowadays in America. You're right. It's terrible.
This entire thing is the giving tree, right? Where I am an American, I feel for people. I want to save all the children, so to speak, right? But we can't. And what we have to align is that borders are for a reason. Borders exist. Our Constitution and its principles and everything that it stands for exist for a reason. If we violate the borders of our own Constitution, so to speak, we don't have a country anymore. We don't have constitutional principles that we live by as Americans. And this has to be involved in the debates that you have at CSU and Turning Point. And I think you're doing an amazing thing. I wish more Americans could just have tabling events and actually
Oh
have
yeah.
discussions with people. It just doesn't happen today, right?
And it's fun. I mean, I learn so much when I debate with people who don't agree with me. I debating with trans people who I have very actually pretty moderate opinions on is some of my favorite conversations I've ever had. I debate with trans people just what they believe trans rights should be. My
Mm-hmm.
only personal belief, I think they're the same as everyone else, same rights, everything. But don't have surgery or hormones till you're 18. And I'll debate that with transgender people. And most of the
100%.
time, they'll literally agree with me. Like they'll be transgender and they'll say, I fully agree with you. That's a great rule. You know, as long as you're not saying we have less rights, that's fine. And then another person who hasn't heard that debate will walk by my table at Turning Point and call me a transphobe. And I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? Like, you
I,
don't know my opinions on this. Come on.
exactly. And your position, which is extremely rational and common sense, is my
Yeah.
exact position, even running for Congress, is like, hey,
Hmm.
I'm a Catholic. I don't agree with that lifestyle whatsoever. But since you're a
No.
free American and we live in a
Do
free
it.
society, you're able to do whatever you want. The
Hmm.
only line in the sand I have is the age of 18. When
That's
you're
it.
the age
Yeah.
of 18 and above, you can do whatever you want. But in the meantime, we're not going to mess with the kids. We're going to let the kids grow up and learn
Exactly.
and focus on becoming a good citizen and learning math and science and learning how to write and not using ChatGPT for everything, so to speak, right? But if we are focusing on social issues, look, I'm not going to lie. I made plenty of mistakes when I was 18, 19 years old. Your neurons don't even connect in your brain
Oh,
until you're
yeah.
25. I promise you're going to make some bad decisions when you're 12. You're going to make some bad decisions when you're 14. That's what parents are for, right? And we need parents who are willing to enforce the standards, right? Raise your kids to be good American citizens. And when they're 18 and want to make dumb decisions, we should let them make all the mistakes that
Yeah.
they want.
And no one ever wants to talk about the trans suicide rate. Well, they do. They talk about the trans suicide rate and they say, "Oh, well, kids are killing themselves pre-transition because they don't have the ability to transition, so they're killing themselves." No one ever wants to talk about the 45% post-transition suicide rate of the
Correct.
45% of people who went through a phase, got told that it was actually the true them and that they need to pursue that, changed their gender permanently, and then killed themselves because they realized that they had just done a life-changing decision that is now irreversible. No one ever wants to bring that up. My whole stance on transgenderism is not against trans people. It is literally wanting to protect lives and save lives because I know
Yeah.
that people are going to transition. They're
Hmm.
going to regret it when they get older and they unfortunately are going to take their lives. It's going to happen. And it's horrible to see that happen. It's terrible. We need to give these people the proper health so that they can stay living for as long as they can. That's like their life is a gift from God. All of ours are. We should never ever take our own life. Live on the longest, best life you can have.
Yeah, it's like in my generation, you know what the biggest thing that was going on in like the early 2000s that people regret 100% that they wish they could change?
What was it?
Girls getting tramp stamps on their lower backs. Okay?
Yeah.
It seemed like a great, cool idea in 2003, and all the girls wanted to do it because all the videos on MTV and everything else looked great. Well, now that we're in our late 30s, early 40s, they regret that decision,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And that was when they were like 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, right? You thought it was a great idea then. I promise you, as you get older and you make more mistakes and, you know, the reality of mortgages and bills and having a job set in, right? Also people with like face tattoos, right? Unless you're like Post Malone and you're making millions of dollars a year doing music videos, maybe you might regret that decision when it comes to a job interview when it comes later in your life, right?
Yeah.
And I know using tattoos is a bad example of comparing it to transgenderism and decisions that young people make, but you're a free American. You can put that tramp stamp on your lower back. You just might have a different ideology when you get older in 20 years, right? But I
Yeah.
think, like I
Well,
said, one of the best things that you're doing is you're having these rational conversations when most Americans just want to attack and beat up on each other. And we need more of those impersonal, cross subject area discussions today.
Yeah, well, I hear a lot of people on transgender debates who are much more strict on their views on trans people than mine. Again, I'm pretty moderate. I hear people a lot of the time compare it to the modern day lobotomy, and they'll say just for kids, because in the future, I don't know if I'd go that far, but I hope they're right in the sense that in the future, 20 years from now, we'll look back and we'll be like, oh, we were cutting, like we were removing the breasts of like 12-year-olds or 14-year-olds or whatever, 16-year-olds. I hope they look back at that and they're like, oh, that was disgusting. That was extremely damaging. We should have never done that. It should be the modern day lobotomy in that sense of looking back eventually and saying like, wow, we are mutilating children and telling them that that was something they need to pursue because that's the true them. It's
exactly.
It's delusional.
You're 100% correct. And now we're seeing the same thing with antidepressants and SSRIs.
Oh yeah.
When I was growing up, antidepressants, SSRIs, Ritalin, all these things that were thought to be good things for society, we're now learning through medical studies and 20-year-long studies that this has a detrimental effect on the mind
Terrible.
and is actually inhibiting us to develop properly and actually is hurting people.
Yeah,
right?
I went through a little depressive phase last year of college. I'll say this, and I got prescribed SSRIs. Never took a single one. I know how damaging they are. I went outside for like 3 hours a day. I was talking with my friends and telling them what was happening, and I was just trying to get into a better headspace just without the medication. I just did normal things that I would do to make me happy before this little depressive episode, I guess.
And getting
now
sunlight.
Sunlight. And I was outside all day. Literally the best mindset, best mental health I've ever been in is right now. And I didn't take any one of the antidepressants because I don't really think they're the greatest fix in the long run, especially because if you stop them, then you get like addicted to them and you become super depressed again. You have to like wean off of them. That already is pretty scary to me. I mean, you look at all this, like the majority of school shootings in America, the majority of those shooters were on antidepressants or SSRIs. That alone is concerning to me.
And really messing with the synapses at that point in your life in developmental phases and using drugs to alter the chemical, transportation system in your brain when you're that young will cause a lot of problems. Like for me, my solution to so-called depression and stress, I work out or I go into the woods with my dog and disappear for a while. Nature has a great way of healing you. It really does, right? But I think most Americans, they want the quick fix. They want the diet pill. They just want things to be resolved instantaneously. And in other countries, like it's kind of funny. One thing I'll tell you, the happiest people I've ever seen in my life was in Nepal, right? The poorest people I've ever seen living on less than $1 a day, literally in tarp mud huts out there in the mountains regions. And they are so happy and they're so healthy. And they have communal families and they all help each other out. And they have nothing. We have everything we want. I mean, I'm in a soundproof studio right now with all this fancy technology, talking to Blake Jones about all these American specific issues that really don't exist in third world countries, right? Because we've had to create problems, right? We don't understand the essence of community and taking care of each other. And I think that your generation and my generation, we're sick and tired of it. We're sick and tired of the people that sent us to war for 20 years in my generation and are making all these laws and causing all this division and social media influencing and, mainstream news media. We're just tired of it. I think that people like you and the kids that I've met at the multiple meetings we've had with you guys is that you're ready for change. You're ready to take control and you're ready to try to bring back like that old school vintage American mentality that everyone dreams about. Right?
Yeah.
That we do live in the greatest country in the world and we can have a debate and we can disagree with each other and we don't need to take drugs and we don't need to do these things that are damaging our future youth, right?
Well, yeah, and not only do I want our country to be great, I want my generation to be great. And there is real statistical evidence, a lot of it, saying that my generation, Gen Z, has actually just gotten stupider from when we were in like 5th grade. Our reading levels are lower, our history levels are lower, our science levels are lower, our math levels are lower. It's all lower. And it's all technology is what it is. It's the fact that we went from paper to basically all technology so fast that we just didn't need to retain any of our skills. People don't read anymore. Like, I don't know anyone who just reads books. I'm way worse at reading than I used to be. And I'm noticing this and I want to create some sort of change because I've noticed the people that in debates with me always, they either go to insults and call me a Nazi or they make these contradictions and they don't realize they're making contradictions.
Right.
It's I think I used to think it's because they were playing stupid. They didn't want to. I think they don't have the intellectual capability to realize when they make contradictions because they judge
I
everything by
agree.
their emotions.
I
It's
actually
just
have a
social media.
I actually have a giant library in my house that I built, and it's amazing. All
Oh,
the books
that's
I've
so
read over the
cool.
years. It's got the rolling ladder, like in Beauty and the Beast, too, because it's really cool looking, right? But
Yeah.
there's actually a great book that was written in the 50s called The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, right? And it's a big, thick book with a giant swastika on the side of it. But it's an in-depth historical review of how that entire situation happened. That
Mm-hmm.
you don't get a lot of good historical context now because it's 82. This year is the 82nd anniversary of D-Day, which is nuts, right? But modern books that are written about the Nazism and everything else, they're missing a lot of context because it's not
Yeah.
from first source accounts. This
Yes.
book, written in the 50s, was written by first source accounts. And I encourage go get it on Amazon. It's pretty cheap. You can get it like used because this book's been around for a while. But it's a great history of like, hey, you know what would be a great idea, Blake, if we don't repeat this entire process?
Oh yeah. I
Like,
mean, I see stuff. People try to erase our past all the time. They just replaced a few days ago. It was like a statue of Robert E. Lee, and I can't remember where, but somewhere in D.C. They replaced it with some like freedom fighter for uh, the equality movement back in the. I can't remember exactly what year, but they did replace the statue of
the
Robert
civil
E.
rights
Lee.
movement in the 60s.
That's what. Yes. Okay. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember if it was the '60s or the '50s. Either way, why are we removing any statues? I feel like it's just trying to hide history, and it's this quote has been around for forever.
No,
Those who
you should
ignore history are
respect
doomed to
America.
repeat it, right?
Exactly,
That's the one. So
100%.
why are we just denying our history and hiding it? We're gonna repeat it if we keep doing this.
Yeah, and another great book I encourage people to read is Ulysses S. Grant's biography. It's actually our autobiography. It's fascinating. It is. He's one of my favorite presidents. Everyone just thinks he was a crazy drunk, but the guy just had severe
Yeah.
PTSD from watching people get blown apart by cannons in the Civil War. But one of the
Yeah.
most fascinating aspects of his life is his time at West Point, what it took to get into West Point at that time, and how his classmate was Robert E. Lee. I can't imagine today fighting my classmates that I went to the Air Force Academy with and trying to kill all of them. You
Yeah.
know
No,
what I
that's
mean?
crazy.
Like it's
Yeah.
nuts. It's nuts. It is an evil, seditious part of our history where so many
Very.
people died and suffered. And there's a reason why they
Very.
erected these monuments, right? Whether it was the South or the North. It was a point of healing in that time period. And people want to say, oh, it's because it was racist and everything else and blah, blah. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of that tied into it. But at the end of the day, you can't comprehend today, right now, going across the street and shooting your neighbor in the
No.
face and taking
No.
his stuff.
And
You
like,
can't.
and there's always going to be racist history. Racism existed in America. Why are we going to erase the history that happened during those times? You see it big with the thing at Disney World where they replaced Splash Mountain. That upset a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was a movie from like the 40s that they based the ride on.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, most movies from the 40s tend to be racist. That's just how it
Go
was.
watch any of the old Looney Tunes with Bugs Bunny and
Yes.
Donald
Oh,
Duck. They
yeah.
were all
Super
racist
racist.
propaganda against the Japanese and the Germans during the time because we were
Absolutely.
trying to vilify our enemy to convince Americans that it was okay to kill these people.
To dehumanize these people, man.
Exactly.
Which is, I added this a little earlier. I think it's what a lot of these people are doing right now to conservatives and Christians by calling us all Nazis and fascists and literally saying that we value less than everyone else because we, again, are racist and they throw out all the buzzwords. It makes it so much easier for these people to vilify us and attack us and assault us and harass us and do anything to us.
And I'll say the
They're
same thing. They did it to my
always.
generation too with Muslims, right? After
Oh
9/11,
yeah.
after 9/11 happened, we were told that everybody from bin Laden to everyone else is that we had to go join the army and go kill everybody. That was the propaganda that we were sold. And don't get me wrong, there's some bad dudes over there. I had to experience it. I had to watch some of the most horrific things in my life from some of the things that they did. But man, I'll also tell you that there were so many other Muslims and Muslim families that I interacted with that were just trying to
Yeah.
survive and live just like we are today.
And
Right? At the end
imagine.
of the day, we're all God's people. We're all made in his image, right? And we have to learn to respect. But one of our responsibilities, especially as Catholics, is that we are required to destroy evil. There is
We are.
evil in the world, right? And we have to speak out against that. And I think you've been doing such amazing things at Turning Point USA to not only defend what you believe in, but have the conversations with people who are just want to destroy and vilify you.
Well,
That's hard to do.
the people who attack us with Turning Point, I say attack, harass, I'll say. They they either tell us that Charlie Kirk was a racist because of his DEI black airline pilot clip that they haven't seen the full video of. They say that Charlie Kirk, they're glad he died. They just shout nasty things towards our tables.
Mhm.
And every time, all we say back is, "God bless you, have a great day." And the physical reaction these people have to God bless you is really interesting to look at. You say God bless you and they're facing this way, they like whip their head around and stare at you and start cursing you out. And I'm like, why do you not only ignore, if you don't believe in God, you ignore the word of God. Why do you not only ignore the word of God, but physically react violently towards it? It is literally like these people hate God. They hate Jesus Christ.
Well, they're possessed.
They're evil people.
Literally.
Like, they're not evil people, but they have some sort of evil inside of them that makes them just directly defy Jesus Christ.
They're possessed by an ideology because they were misdirected, because they don't understand history, they don't understand what's going on in the real world, and they're indoctrinated by a system that doesn't appreciate or love them, right?
Yeah, it's terrible.
So as we get ready to close out, explain all the things you're doing at CSU now, at Turning Point USA, how people can get involved, how people can contact you.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
we need to expand this movement. More Gen Z kids, more Gen Alpha kids. Like, you know what? If no one else is going to change it, if the so-called older generations aren't going to change it, then we need to change it. So how can they contact you? How can they get involved at Turning Point? How can they get involved in Turning Point USA CSU?
Absolutely. Do you mind if I give my Instagram on here? So
No, please do.
I'll put that on there so people are able to contact me there if they want to. My handle is just Blake Jones, as my name is, no space, 21306. Feel free to text me there. I want more people to join Turning Point. I love it. People think that we're a conservative or Republican group. By the way, we are nonpartisan. We want liberals to join, Republicans to join. Anybody who likes free speech and
Blake
fighting
Jones,
for free speech.
21306. Is that correct?
That's it. Yeah.
There we
That's
go.
my Insta. So anyone who wants to
Technology.
fight for free speech, no matter what you think politically, you should join. And I myself am planning on joining a Turning Point Action chapter next year on campus. I'm not sure if it will work out, but if it does, we are able to be partisan, and I'll be able to endorse candidates and do things like that.
Yeah.
So next year, if you go to CSU or you know somebody who does, refer them to that, because that's a really important thing to join. So we can promote people like even you, Adam. We could promote like your campaign for Congress, whereas Turning Point is not allowed to. It would be awesome to be able to have signs for candidates and really show our political affiliation there. But yeah, main thing is just be open about your beliefs, push your Christian beliefs, push your moral beliefs. I don't like to push my political beliefs as aggressively as my Christian ones, but that's because I live off a moral basis. Everything I do, I think, is this the moral thing to do? And if it is, then I will do that action. That's what I try to live on. Pushing your moral beliefs, if it is Christianity, is very important, because it's just showing people how to live and be polite and be a good human being.
Exactly. And this is like what I say as a candidate. I'm just an ethical and moral blue collar guy trying to do the right thing and save America.
Oh, yeah.
I don't need the endorsement of anyone. I just need the supporters of people like you and Americans who are ready for change. And like I said, I'm not doing this podcast for myself. And never have I. I've always just interviewed people. But the entire objective of this is to actually just talk to real Americans, real people trying to make a difference in the world. And I want to thank you for your bravery and everything that you've done outside of politics. I think you're an amazing young man. I think you have such a bright young future ahead of you. And I think you are part of the generation that's going to help fix America and mend together our brokenness that we've seen just over the past 10, 20 years.
Well, I appreciate that. That's my whole goal. That's what I want to do in my future, is help get people together, get people to talk instead of use violence and anger and insults again. Just let us have some discourse, you know?
Yeah.
All of my friends are liberals. We get along super well. We hang out all the time.
Yeah, I'm from New Jersey. Half my family's Democrats. Like, it's fine. It's fine. They think I'm crazy running for office, and I think I am too, but that's what it is. But hey, everyone, connect with Blake Jones. It's at Blake Jones 21306. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen for you guys on audio only. We will definitely catch you guys next time on the Tuxton Tomahawks podcast. And once again, Blake, hang out here for a second as we end the show. But thank you so much for coming on the show today. It is an honor and a privilege to know you.
Same. Thank you for having me.